everyone, welcome to the Zoom presentation, and our topic today is on the topic of ethics and religion. And let me share the screen with you and jump right into it. And here we go. I'm looking at the clock, making sure I'm following that. So here we go. We jump into this topic of religion and ethics. We've already been exposed to some topics relating to religion in this class when we studied lesson plan 4, where we covered I think Eastern schools of thought. We looked a little bit about Hinduism and Jainism and Chinese thought and so forth, just to give you guys a glimpse of it. If you wanted to study that much more in depth, I highly recommend Philosophy 15 at Mount SAC, which is World Religions. I teach it as a regular Philosophy 15 and also as an honors Philosophy 15, and I welcome you to take that class anytime. It's structured very similar to this class. Okay, so coming down here, what we want to do is learn about the different religions, both the East and the West, and just not learning, because this is not a world religions class per se, but just what they have to say about the different ethical case topics or applied ethics. And we have Eastern religions, Hinduism, Jainism. Jainism, we're not covering them in the reading, and the only thing to really note is how strong they are in support of ahimsa, as we already learned about that in lesson plan 4. It impacts their diet. Again, it means compassion or nonviolence. It impacts their jobs. It impacts, the whole livelihood and whole disposition. So that is for the Jains. And we'll talk a little bit about Buddhists and Sikhs here. And then we'll cover Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But when you open up the required reading, let me just show you here, the BBC links are on these various religions. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And you're only focusing on these 4 bullets within those. If you're missing one of those, I think, for instance, on Sikhism, let me just show you. We're only going to go to ethics. You're going to ignore all of that because that would be a rural religions class, just ethics. And then you only have here abortion, euthanasia. So you would not have to read war, organ donation, and contraception. You don't have to read those, but if you were to read them and say, hey, I found that interesting, I want to put a pie post up, that is what a pie posts are for. It's for you to cover something that we didn't cover that you find that captured your attention and you want to discuss it with your classmates or share with it. So there's a lot of opportunities for pie posts when you click in there. And that reading is pretty simple to follow. And again, only clicking on ethics, that's all you're looking at. Okay, let's go back here and let me just talk some highlights, not going over line by line, just some highlights. And then in our next lesson plan, we'll be looking at the topic of atheism and ethics. And do you really need religion to be a moral, ethical character? And the lesson plan is going to argue from the various different philosophers. No, you do not. I tend to agree with that, absolutely, because a lot of very well-known, beautiful, wonderful, compassionate people are non-religious. Okay, and it doesn't mean if you are religious, you're unethical either. Ethics doesn't have to come from religion. It can, but it doesn't have to. Okay, so Hinduism is one of our Eastern religions, and in terms of abortion, they are generally against it unless it's the life of the mother is in jeopardy. There is a preference for sons, so sometimes there has been cases of women aborting if they are females that they're carrying, and that's kind of a sad situation, but that tends to be, that preference for sons has been part of the Hindu culture for so long. Very often you're going to see the word karma come up when you're looking at the Eastern religion. So karma is going to really radically impact their thinking. Karma is this idea of action, and every action has a reaction. We tend to use that term in even our modern day Western world. Oh, that's good karma. Oh, that's bad karma. But that kind of thinking that every action has a reaction and it's going to impact you and kind of mark you some way, positively or negatively, will certainly be part of their thinking when they're making moral decisions. So abortion, they're going to be thinking about karma. Capital punishment, the same thing. Capital punishment is allowed in India, but it's very, very rare. And I have the word ahimsa because grounded in Indian thinking is that sense of nonviolence. You're going to have euthanasia being not necessarily supported, but there has been cases. This is an interesting term here. It's an Indian word. I don't know, I have it highlighted there, but it's prayopavesa. Prayopavesa, that's how you say it, prayopavesa. And it's the concept of starving yourself to death. And you think, well, why would somebody do that? It would be cases in Indian culture, Hinduism, and more specifically Jainism has it, where somebody doesn't want to act anymore in the world. They don't want to gather any more karma. They're at the point of death. They are elder in age. They are soon to die anyway. And it's like instead of, marking onto the soul any more karma, they just stop all action and they stop eating, they stop drinking. And 3 days later, from lack of water, lack of any liquids, one would pass away. And this concept is something that is not pervasive in Indian culture at all. It's very rare, and it's usually for the monastics when they are thinking they're going to head off into the metaphysical realities. They don't want to have any more karma be marking their soul. So they just kind of stop all action and pray and meditate and then pass away. So that's kind of I think it's covered in this reading as kind of connecting to that concept of euthanasia. Animals here, in terms of Hinduism, you're going to find ahimsa also focused, but not to the same level of the Jains, because you're going to find in Hinduism, only about a third of the Hindus in India are vegetarian. There is a deep respect for the cow, though, so they will not be eating beef. If they are eating any form of meat, they will not be eating beef. And the reason why the cow is so honored, it's not worshipped, it's not viewed as divine, it's rather revered as a mother, and a mother who feeds her children, not through her meat, but through her milk. So it's like the mother who nourishes me through milk, through ghee, through cheese, through like dairy products. Why would one kill her? So that was the kind of the Indian concept there. So she's truly honored and not worshipped. So that there's a misnomer if you think the cow is worshipped. And then we have Jainism, which we talked about. Then Buddhism here. So Buddhism also has this, traditionally abortion is not embraced except in cases where, you know, the mother's life is in jeopardy or maybe very severe deformity of the baby. Karma also enters the picture. We have capital punishment, and that's where the state could, you know, take the life of the criminal for some horrific action that they did. And it's generally argued against in Buddhism as well, that idea of like more compassion, and it would be bad karma to engage in capital punishment. There are some cases in Buddhist countries that have, and Thailand is mentioned in the reading, I believe. Euthanasia, again, not so much, some voluntary cases against involuntary cases. So we learned about those terms already. And against suicide because you die, according to the Buddhists, with a bad consciousness. So it's kind of marks your soul karmically. Animals, they have this understanding in the Eightfold Path of Buddhism that one of the steps to enlightenment, well, actually the Eightfold Path is having wisdom, having morality, and having meditation. And those three things contribute to an enlightened being. And so morality is super important. And in that morality part of the Eightfold Path, it's not killing. And so some of them take that, not all Buddhists, but some of them take that to be impacting their diet and how to treat animals. The Mahayana school, some of them do a little bit more. The Dalai Lama school from Tibet does not. Okay. Sikhism, we have their religious text is called the Guru Granth, and it argues against abortion. And again, there is a favoritism for sons, so just to note that. And that might impact, I mean, there may be cases obviously of women aborting if there's a female, if there's a preference for sons. So even though there's a general stance against something, there may be side cases of it happening. Capital punishment, it would fit with what the Hindus' position was. It's not covered in the reading. Euthanasia is not supported. And I thought this was interesting that they said extra care so that assisted suicide is not an attractive option. So those that are ill and are suffering, maybe instead of helping them get out of the world, just making their time here more gentle and easier for them. And animals, some support, some not support. The history of Sikhism is a little mixed there. If you go into a Sikh temple, they have a really, actually, I think I should add this. They have this, and you'll learn about this in a world religions class. They have this understanding of the langar, and the langar is at the temple where they have a whole kind of restaurant set up to feed people there. And you don't have to be Sikh to go. It's open to anybody, any caste, any affiliation, anybody is welcome to walk into a Sikh temple and be fed in that langar. And it's all done through service, and it's all done through charity work and donations. And it's just a really wonderful ethical principle that they ascribe to, is that idea of helping and sharing and giving. In light of that, how it fits with the animal topic is that when they're serving food at the langar, it has to be vegetarian, but in their home life, some of the Sikhs will eat animals. So just wanted to throw that. It's kind of mixed. In some cases, it's a very strong support, but sometimes you'll have Sikh families not follow that diet at home. Okay, then we have the Western religions, and we have Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and they're all going to pretty much be arguing against abortion. But in Judaism, it says it's really only for very serious reasons, and it should be early in the pregnancy, and really in cases be allowed where the mother's health is at risk, the child's health, there's a case of rape or incest. But in traditional Judaism, it's argued in the Hebrew scriptures, it says somewhere in there, and I don't exactly know the passage, but the fetus is kind of part of the mother, and it's only really considered, a separate at the time of birth. So that would maybe impact their thinking a little bit. Capital punishment, the Torah offers cases for it, and the Talmud is commentaries on the Torah, clarifies that it's almost impossible to implement. Okay. And it's not allowed in Israel today, although they have had cases of capital punishment when they were putting to death a Nazi war criminal. So there are some justifications, but it has to be very strict when they do that. Euthanasia is not supported. Okay, moving here. Animals, kosher meat in Judaism. So the animal has to be killed very quickly, very swiftly, without any kind of consciousness. It's very right across the jugular. And there is some question, well, if we don't want to cause pain to the animal, could we pre-stun the animals so they don't even kind of make them lose their consciousness so they have zero pain whatsoever? So there was some little reading in the BBC link on that one. I remember reading that. Hunting for sport is rejected, and they will not eat pigs. It's against their rules there. So on animals, that's mentioned, no pork. And Islam has the same thing, no pork, and it's probably from a Jewish influence. Christianity, now this is interesting. We already learned about abortion, so we already learned that overall it's definitely rejected. But we have cases where some of the Christian early church fathers, like Augustine and the medieval philosopher Aquinas, said as long as it's before quickening, and I think you can maybe argue that's before the movement of the baby, about 15 weeks. And maybe you can say because you wouldn't know if the woman was pregnant, they didn't have pregnancy tests, they didn't have ultrasounds. So if it's before any evidence of their baby, there's no movement, maybe they were thinking in those cases, if you're not even sure you're pregnant, you're speculating because your period's not around, but maybe that's probably why, I'm not sure. But once the infant becomes, not the infant, but the fetus grows to a certain size and starts to move around, then that would be unacceptable from that perspective. Capital punishment, it has been allowed in Christianity, but in modern day times it's moving away from it. Euthanasia has not been supported traditionally, and animals, it's kind of mixed bag again. You're going to have that understanding more like the animals are here for us. So kind of that Judeo-Christian perspective of we can do as we wish to the animals. The philosopher Descartes had this understanding that animals don't feel, they don't experience consciousness. So that whole Rene Descartes philosophy kind of is connected there. But then you're going to have Christian groups and thinkers that challenge that. And here we have the Seventh-day Adventist Christians who are very strict vegetarian. Not all of them, but they're the ones that kind of run the Loma Linda University and the medical programs there. And we go onto their campus, they have, very much a conscious effort not to serve animals in some of their cafeterias, I believe, and so forth. So I haven't been on the campus, but I have been told that they have a really wonderfully delicious vegetarian display there. There's in the BBC link, there is Andrew Lindsay mentioned, and he's an example of a Christian pastor and how he's promoting animal consciousness and living the vegetarian lifestyle, saying that God creates the universe out of love and compassion, and so should we follow through with our fellow brethren on this planet, and with that in mind. So there's a little article on that. Now, Islam, it's in cases where the mother's death could result from the pregnancy, and some say in cases of baby defects. So there's a discussion of that. And then some say in the first 120 days, and some say no. So it's kind of a mix. Again, you're not necessarily going to have a hard, fast rule on that. But some, basically, it's really more following in line with a lot of these other religions. It's really in the cases of the mother's death or the defect of the child. And then capital punishment, Sharia law does allow for it. in extreme cases. And for if they saw treason, there has been cases of capital punishment where adultery has been committed. And sadly enough, in some countries, they will not allow homosexuality and have actually engaged in capital punishment for that, which I'm going to think that is just absolutely unacceptable from my perspective. And I'm sure yours as well. Okay, euthanasia. And euthanasia is against the will of Allah, that Allah really, Allah refers to God, and it's, you know, all in the will of Allah, and it's who are we to obstruct the will of Allah by taking our own life. And then animals, they have the understanding of halal meat, and it's also killed in a certain way, and it's supposed to be less painful, and it's supposed to be quick and without consciousness and so forth. So it's very strongly similar to the Jewish understanding there, and also the no pork is also from Jewish influence. So I know I kind of whipped through these, and I just kind of giving you some of the highlights, making it maybe hopefully when you're doing the reading gel together for you a little bit better. I do love the golden rule, do unto others if you have them do unto you, and that's mentioned for Christianity. And it fits, if you remember from the beginning of the semester when we were studying Kohlberg and Kohlberg's different stages of morality. That's one of the highest stages, is that sixth stage, is the golden rule stage. So each religion has kind of a neat message within them, and I have positive things to say about all these religions. If you were to take my world religions class, I would tell you, you know, the beauty within Islam, the beauty within Christianity and Judaism, Sikhism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Hinduism. So I have an affinity and a relationship with all of them. I'm kind of eclectic in that sense. So that's that. And required reading, we end in a few minutes. I have Thich Nhat Hanh, and he is a Buddhist monk, very, very well known, kind of like the Dalai Lama. He is being interviewed by Oprah. It is a fabulous interview, and he talks about deep listening and compassionate listening, and it's just very moving. It's probably, I have favorite films, and this is one of my favorites on this list. That's like my favorite on this list. Each time you open up a lesson plan, I'll have that one film that I just adore, and that's that one. This is a Hindu priest speaking on ethics. This is a TED Talk by an Islamic presenter, and then we have Christian ethics and a little bit on Mother Teresa, and then we have an example of a Jewish hero here on PBS by name Herschel. And a student did this film a few years ago as one of the reports for the class, and I thought it was good to put that there. And it's only 3 minutes if you wanted to watch that. And again, anything you do extra beyond required optional readings, optional films are always been Pi Post opportunities for you. Okay, that concludes my presentation. Let me stop share. Let me reiterate one more time. I absolutely would love to have any of you join my world religions class, whether it's the on campus, I'm sorry, not on campus. It's the online World Religions Philosophy 15 or the Philosophy 15 honors course. And we cover 12 lesson plans just like we do in this class. We learn about how to study religion and how it started and different theories of why it started. We learn about, what else do I do in that class? We learn how religions spread and grow, what accounts for some religions being stronger in numbers than others. Then we jump right into Hinduism, and then we go to Jainism, and then we go to, I think it's Buddhism and Sikhism, a little bit of Chinese religion, Tao Te Ching and Confucian thought. Then we go into the 3 Western religions, and that's Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And historically, you would say Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And we have one report. I used to send them on field trips, but haven't been doing that. So they do one report on, they pick one religion that they want to go really in depth with and learn a little bit more about. And the class is comparable to this. It's a nice complement. It's like the other end of the bookend for this course. So I'm hoping to see some of you join that. And I'm going to end. I have one more Zoom with you guys, and that's on the last lesson plan. Thank you so much. Namaste, everyone. Bye-bye.